When Elon Musk steps into the worn halls of his old high school, he's greeted not by nostalgia, but by the face of the janitor who once protected him from bullies. What starts as a chance reunion unravels a hidden story that could change countless lives forever. It was an unusually gray afternoon when Elon Musk walked through the doors of Pretoria Boys High School for the first time in nearly 4 decades. The corridors smelled of varnished wood, aged paper, and something he couldn't quite place. Memory, maybe. As he passed the cracked trophy case and faded class photos, he caught glimpses of himself. Awkward, quiet, always scribbling in a notebook, always alone. The visit was unannounced. No entourage, no cameras. Just Elon in a plain navy jacket and jeans, walking slowly, like the building might breathe if he moved too fast. The school had invited him back a dozen times over the years, and he'd always declined. But something, maybe the recent launch, maybe a dream he'd had the night before, drew him back. He turned a corner and nearly collided with an old man pushing a mop bucket. "Careful there," came a voice, rough as sandpaper but edged with warmth. Elon looked up, then froze. The man stood hunched but tall in spirit, a mop in one hand, the other gripping the bucket's handle. His face was carved with lines of time and effort, and his white hair stuck out from under a weathered blue cap. But it was the eyes, clear, amber, steady, that Elon remembered. "Elijah?" Elon's voice cracked like a boy's. The janitor squinted, then blinked. His expression shifted from confusion to stunned recognition. "Well, I'll be damned. Elon Reeve Musk. You got tall." They stared at each other in silence. The school's dull buzz faded away. It was just them and the years between them, standing like a ghost in the hallway. "You still carry that notebook?" Elijah asked. Elon pulled it from his jacket pocket, smaller, now digital, but the gesture felt the same. Elijah smiled. "Never thought I'd see you again." They moved into the maintenance room, the only place without surveillance or echoes. The shelves were lined with old paint cans, dusty brooms, and a kettle that looked like it survived the Cold War. Elijah poured them tea, though his hand trembled slightly with the weight of the kettle. Elon sat across from him, a little boy again, despite all his billions. "You know," Elijah began, voice low, "I never forgot those afternoons, when the others would corner you, in the locker room, by the science wing. I was just a janitor, no authority, but I had a mop handle and no patience for cruelty." "You saved me," Elon said quietly. Elijah waved a hand. "I cleaned up messes." "That was one of them." There was a long silence. Elon looked around. "You're still working here?" Elijah nodded. 83 last month. Can't afford to stop. My pension dried up years ago, and the school doesn't offer much to folks who scrub the floors. You should be retired, resting, traveling." A bitter laugh. "I'd settle for a mattress that doesn't make my spine feel like it's grinding itself apart." The words hit Elon harder than he expected. He leaned forward, voice quieter. "You're in pain?" "Most days, yeah. Back's a mess. Need surgery. Not urgent enough for government care, too expensive for private." Elon was quiet for a long time. His mind, usually a storm of calculations and systems and ambition, was stilled by something far more human. "How much would it cost?" Elijah looked away. "Doesn't matter. I'm not your charity case. I didn't do what I did to cash in." "I know that," Elon said, a spark behind his eyes. "That's exactly why it matters." Elijah sipped his tea and winced slightly as he shifted. "Truth is, I don't mind working. I like being here. Kids need someone who sees them, not just teachers. Someone who listens, even when they've got nothing to say." Elon leaned back, absorbing the weight of those words. A beat passed. "Do you remember those sketches I used to show you?" he asked. Elijah grinned. "Of course. Rockets, robots, planets with cities built into the clouds. You had dreams too big for your body back then. I never told anyone. This, Elon said slowly. But the sketches you saved? You scanned them into the school archive. Did you know that? I wanted to make sure they didn't get lost. They didn't. One of them, the propulsion layout from 1987? It influenced the Merlin engine. Elijah froze, teacup halfway to his lips. You're telling me something I pulled out of... A crumpled folder helped launch a rocket. Helped launch SpaceX. The janitor blinked, stunned. But that's not why I'm here, Elon said, standing suddenly. The energy around him shifted like a quiet storm gathering force. I came because I needed to remember something. Someone. And I found him still cleaning the floors. What? Are you saying, Elon? I'm saying it's time for people like you to stop going unnoticed. Elijah frowned. People like me? The ones who shape the future without anyone ever realizing it. Just then, the bell rang. Students began to pour into the hallways. The noise rushed back in like a tide. But Elon didn't hear it. He was already pulling out his phone, typing something with fierce intent. Elon, Elijah called, his voice trembling. What are you about to do? Elon looked up, and for the first time since they'd reunited, his face broke into a grin that could bend steel. Something long overdue. But before Elijah could ask another question, two security guards rounded the corner, alert, eyes scanning. One of them pointed toward Elon, speaking rapidly into a radio. They know you're here, Elijah whispered. What did you do? Elon didn't answer. He just handed Elijah a folded sheet of paper freshly printed from the nearest office printer. Elijah opened it, hands shaking. His eyes scanned the bold letters. The Elijah Foundation for Unsung Heroes. In Education. Initial endowment. 50,000. He looked up. Elon was already walking away, swallowed by the crowd of students. But Elijah never got the chance to call out, because that's when the principal stepped into the hallway, flanked by school board members, and their eyes were locked on Elijah. What is going on here? The principal asked coldly, and Elijah, still clutching the paper, realized this moment wasn't a happy ending. It was the beginning of something far bigger, something dangerous, something unstoppable. The hallway buzzed with footsteps and murmurs, students shuffling past without a clue that history was unfolding inches from their shoulders. Elijah stood frozen, the letter trembling in his hand. The Elijah Foundation? He read the words again, slower this time, as though he might have misunderstood them the first time. It felt surreal. 50 million? His name, etched into something permanent. Something real? He hadn't cried in years. He'd buried too many friends and worked too many shifts alone in dark hallways to allow himself that luxury. But now, the edges of his eyes burned. Before he could blink away the heat, a cold voice snapped him back into the present. Elijah, Principal DeVries said, his narrow face set like marble, lips pursed beneath thin spectacles. A word. Now. The board members flanking him were equally stern. Rigid backs, clipboards clutched like weapons. Elijah had seen that look before. Bureaucrats pretending they weren't already writing your eulogy in their heads. He tucked the letter behind his back instinctively. DeVries motioned toward the staff lounge. Let's not make a scene. Elijah followed, the back pain that had grown dull now flaring into sharp jabs with every step. The lounge was quiet, dimly lit, a stale smell of old coffee and forgotten lunches hanging in the air. They shut the door behind him. Care to explain what exactly is going on? DeVries asked, hands clasped behind his back. Elijah said nothing, at first. He looked down at the tile floor. He'd cleaned it just this morning. You could see your reflection in it if you tried. Mr. Musk, Elijah began slowly, returned to visit the school. We had a conversation. He shared something with me. DeVries raised an eyebrow. And what exactly did he share? Elijah hesitated. Part of him wanted to lay the paper on the table and let the words do the talking. But something deep, In his gut, something forged from decades of watching good intentions get crushed under bureaucracy told him to hold back. "He thanked me," Elijah said instead. "For the past." DeVries narrowed his eyes, and then he left in a hurry. After accessing a school printer, unsupervised, Elijah shrugged. "He wanted to print something. Didn't say what." The principal stared at him a moment too long. Then he leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Elijah, I'm going to speak plainly. You've been a fixture here longer than most of the building itself. But this institution is under pressure. Enrollment's down. Donors are skittish. If anything comes out that embarrasses this school, if it looks like we're exploiting a celebrity alumnus for personal gain." Elon offered. Elijah cut in. DeVries's jaw clenched. "You expect me to believe that a billionaire just waltzed in here and offered you something out of the goodness of his heart?" "He didn't offer me anything," Elijah said, voice hardening. "He offered the people you pretend not to see. The ones who keep this place breathing." A beat passed. One of the board members, a younger man with slick hair and restless fingers, stepped forward. "If this foundation is real," he said carefully, "and if it's connected to the school in any way, we'll need legal review, PR strategy, approval from the Department of Education. You can't just go around making announcements." "I didn't make anything," Elijah snapped. "Elon did." Another beat. DeVries adjusted his tie, annoyed by the shift in tone. "Well," he said finally, "until we understand the full scope of this situation, we'll need you to take a leave of absence, with immediate effect." The words hit like a slap. "What?" Elijah blinked. "You'll be paid through the end of the month," DeVries added quickly, clearly trying to frame this as mercy. "Pending investigation into this incident and any violations of our media policies." Elijah felt his throat tighten. "Are you serious?" "We can't risk reputational damage," one of the women on the board said gently, but her voice was detached, rehearsed. "We hope you understand." Elijah stood silently for a moment. In his pocket, the folded paper crinkled as his fist clenched around it. A million thoughts surged through his head. Anger, humiliation, disbelief, but most of all, a burning sense of injustice. This was exactly the kind of quiet erasure people like him faced every day. A gentle push out the door. A final silence. He didn't speak. Didn't give them the satisfaction. He turned, opened the door, and walked down the hallway without another word. Students passed by without noticing him now. He was already becoming invisible. Outside, the air had thickened. Clouds pressed low against the sky, as if holding back a storm. He walked slowly across the courtyard, past the flagpole, past the cracked stone fountain. He paused at the edge of the old football field. His back ached, his knees pulsed with every step. He sat on a bench beneath the jacaranda tree, its purple blossoms just beginning to fall. He unfolded the letter again. The ink had smeared slightly from his palm, but the words were still there, still his. He read the title out loud, just once, the Elijah Foundation, and then he heard the footsteps, not from the school this time, but from behind him. He turned. Elon stood there, arms crossed, brows drawn tight. "I know that look," he said. "What did they do?" Elijah didn't answer. He just handed him the folded paper again. Creased now, sweat-stained but sacred. Elon read it. His face didn't change, but his jaw set. "They suspended you," he said, not asking. "Called it a leave of absence," Elijah muttered. "Effective immediately." A silence fell between them, but it wasn't empty. It was electric. "Then they're about to find out what effective immediately really means," Elon said. Elijah looked at him. "This foundation, is it real?" "It's already funded," Elon replied. "I wired the money an hour ago." A long breath escaped Elijah's chest. "Why?" Elon didn't smile. His face was carved from steel. Because I've spent my whole life building things, but nothing I've built would exist without people like you. And it's time the world remembered that. But this school won't let it happen, Elijah said. They're already trying to shut it down. Elon reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone. Then I'll go over their heads. To who? He looked up. To everyone. And as Elijah watched him make the call, direct, confident, unshakable, he realized this wasn't about charity. It wasn't even about gratitude. It was a reckoning. But just as Elon pressed the phone to his ear, a black car pulled up to the curb. Tinted windows. No plates. Elon paused. The passenger door opened. A man stepped out. Dark suit. Eyes hidden behind mirrored glasses. Elon Musk, the man said flatly. You'll need to come with me. Elijah stood slowly. Who are you? The man didn't look at him. Security detail. We've had concerns. Whose security? Elon asked. The man didn't answer. And just like that, the air shifted again. Heavier now. Charged. Something unseen had just entered the game. And neither of them knew whose move was next. The man in the black suit stood motionless, as if the air itself bent around him. Even the wind seemed to pause, ruffling the jacaranda blossoms gently, cautiously. Elon didn't move. His hand hovered near his phone, thumb still warm from where he'd been dialing. His eyes, sharp, analytical, almost predator-like. In their calm, narrowed. Security detail? Elon asked again, voice clipped. For what? The man finally turned to face him fully. Mr. Musk, you've been flagged for unscheduled activity involving a secure public institution. Your appearance here raised concerns at several levels. Elijah stepped forward, wary but unafraid. Several levels? He visited a school. His school. What kind of threat does that pose? The man didn't acknowledge Elijah. His mirrored lenses reflected nothing but light. No emotion, no response. We'll debrief en route, the man said to Elon. Vehicle is secured. This won't take long. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me who sent you, Elon said. Calm, but now with an edge that could cut through steel. Because you're not SpaceX. You're not Tesla security. And I didn't call for a pickup. Another silence, the kind that made Elijah's stomach twist. The air carried something darker now. Not just tension. Consequence. The man reached into his jacket slowly. Elijah's pulse spiked. He moved without thinking, stepping in front of Elon, like he had all those years ago when 3 older boys cornered him behind the gym lockers. His instinct to protect hadn't aged a day, but the man only pulled out a sleek black ID badge. No name, no photo, just an embossed seal Elijah didn't recognize and a string of numbers below it. Level 4 clearance, that's all I can say. Elon's eyes scanned the badge. He was already memorizing the sequence, running it through a mental algorithm like a lock he was built to pick. That's not government, he said flatly. And it's not military. No, the man said, and for the first time a flicker of something passed over his face. A hint of respect, maybe. But it's adjacent. That was enough. Elon looked at Elijah. I need to see where this leads. I'll be back. Elijah's jaw clenched. He hated this. Hated the mystery, the silence, the way power moved like shadows behind glass. Are you sure? I am, Elon said. But I need you to do something while I'm gone. Elijah nodded once. Go home. Lay low. Do not talk to the press. If anyone asks about the foundation, say you don't know anything. You're making me sound like some kind of spy, Elijah said, trying to force a smile. But Elon didn't smile back. This is bigger than I thought. He turned, stepped toward the car. The man in the suit opened the rear door. Elon slid inside, casting one last look at Elijah, something between warning and reassurance. Then the door shut, the engine purred like a threat, and the vehicle slipped away without a sound. Elijah stood alone on the sidewalk, the foundation letter still in his pocket, its corners now soft from being held too tight. That night, the janitor's small apartment buzzed with silence. It was a narrow space, half kitchen, half living room, with a bedroom tucked behind a curtain. Books lined the shelves in odd stacks, philosophy next to manuals for outdated vacuum systems, poetry wedged beside broken circuit boards. On one wall hung a faded photo of his late wife, and beside it, a yellowed drawing, one of Elon's early rocket sketches, signed in pencil. One day, Elijah stared at the television. News scrolled across the screen. Elon Musk's surprise. Visit to South African school raises questions. Below that, blurry phone video from students. Elon in the hallway, Elijah beside him, handing over the paper. He reached for the remote, switched it off. Silence returned, louder than before. Then came the knock, 3 short raps. Hesitant. He waited. Another 3. He opened the door. A teenage girl stood there, maybe 16. Sharp eyes, braids tucked behind her ears, wearing a school uniform with the same patch Elijah had sewn onto 100 jackets over the years. She clutched a notepad against her chest. "Mr. Elijah?" she asked. "I'm Naledi." Elijah nodded, cautiously. "You're a student?" "I'm the editor of the school paper," she said quickly. "I've been looking into the foundation thing. The teachers won't talk. Admin shut down our questions. They pulled your name from the website. Already." He blinked. "Already?" She nodded. "Gone. Wiped clean, as if it never existed." Elijah stepped aside. "Come in." Inside, she looked around the cluttered space with wide eyes. "You kept that?" she asked, nodding toward the sketch. "I keep a lot of things people forget," he said. Naledi sat down. "Why are they hiding this?" "Because power doesn't like being embarrassed," Elijah replied. "And nothing embarrasses people like being reminded they didn't do the right thing when it mattered." Naledi scribbled the quote into her notebook. "Can I ask why he came back, after all this time?" Elijah looked away. "He was looking for something. Maybe just a place where the past wasn't covered in glass and plaques." Naledi hesitated. "Can I see the letter?" Elijah didn't answer. He walked to a drawer and pulled it out slowly, handed it to her like a fragile heirloom. She read it, her hands shaking. "This could change everything," she whispered. He nodded. "If they let it." Before she could respond, his phone rang. He looked at the screen. No number, no name, just a blinking icon. He picked up. "Hello?" A pause. Then Elon's voice, quiet, tight, barely above a whisper. "They're trying to stop the foundation. There are players we didn't see coming, ones with reach." "Who?" Elijah asked, heart pounding. "I don't know yet, but they're connected to the school board. Private donors, possibly tied to defense contracts." Elijah glanced at Naledi, who was staring at him, eyes wide. "What do we do?" Elijah asked. "You need to disappear," Elon said. "Until we know who's trying to bury this." "I'm not running," Elijah growled. "Not again." "You're not running," Elon replied. "You're preparing." "For what?" Elon's answer came after a long silence. "For war." And in the background, before the call dropped, Elijah heard a voice yelling, the sound of glass shattering. And then, nothing. Elijah stood in the middle of his living room, phone still pressed to his ear long after the line had gone dead. Static silence. Not even the cold, mechanical voice of a disconnected call. Just gone. Glass shattering. A voice yelling, distorted, panicked. Elon's voice cut off mid-sentence. Across the room, Naledi slowly lowered her notepad, sensing The shift in the air. What happened? She asked carefully, eyes locked on his face. Elijah turned to her, the phone slipping from his hand and clattering against the worn tile. Something's wrong. That wasn't just interference. You think he's in danger? He didn't answer, because the truth was heavier than that. The truth had claws. I think we both are, Elijah finally said. Naledi's fingers tensed around her notebook. We can't stay here. No, Elijah said, already moving. His mind was grinding through the few connections he still had. People from old maintenance contracts, ex-veterans who now fixed elevators or installed school alarms, people who owed him small debts, or at least still picked up when he called. He opened the closet, pulled out a backpack. Inside was a pair of heavy work gloves, a flashlight, a utility knife, and an old photo of his wife. He hesitated before adding the letter from Elon. Naledi moved quickly, following his lead. Where are we going? There's a place, off the N1 highway. Used to be a maintenance depot before the city sold it off. It's empty now, mostly. Nobody'll think to look there. She nodded, already pulling her phone from her bag. I'll ping the school newspaper's cloud. Dump everything I've collected. Emails, admin responses, photos from the hallway. If something happens to us, someone has to know what we were digging into. Elijah looked at her. Really looked. You know you don't have to come with me. This isn't your fight. Naledi met his gaze without flinching. You protected Elon when he was a kid. He didn't ask. You just did it. He blinked, her words sinking deeper than she probably intended. She lifted her chin. You shouldn't have to do this alone. He nodded, slowly. Then pack light. They left through the back alley, shadows pooling under broken streetlights, past rows of rusted bins and cracked fences. Elijah moved with the quiet grace of someone who'd spent most of his life avoiding attention. Naledi kept pace beside him, her footsteps sharp and careful, like she'd grown up listening for trouble before it arrived. As they walked, Elijah's mind returned to the phone call. Elon's voice, steady, but clipped. Defense contracts. School. Board. Players we didn't see coming. The warning hadn't been paranoia. It had been prediction. Someone had decided to erase Elijah from the story, not just from the school, but from the narrative entirely. And Elon, he was the one person who could put a global spotlight on the truth, which meant someone had every reason to silence him first. By the time they reached the highway edge, Elijah's legs were aching, his back howling. He tried not to show it, but Naledi caught him wincing. You okay? She asked. He grunted. Define okay. She cracked a smile. Still sharp, at least. They cut through a drainage ditch, then followed a dirt path that veered off the highway toward a cluster of long-abandoned buildings. The depot stood like a monument to decay. Concrete walls streaked with time, windows boarded or shattered. A chain-link fence sagged along one edge. Elijah reached under a cinder block and retrieved a rusted key. You hid a key here? Naledi asked, incredulous. Some habits are hard to break. They stepped inside. The depot smelled of dust, old, oil, and forgotten lives. But it was dry, tucked away, and safe enough, for now. Elijah lit a single portable lamp. The room glowed in soft amber, casting long shadows along the concrete. Naledi dropped her bag. Now what? We wait, Elijah said, sitting heavily on an overturned crate. And we think. Who benefits from this foundation not existing? Naledi pulled out her notepad, flipping through pages. We know the school board had prior donations from several large tech contractors, some with government ties. Elijah nodded. So the idea of a high-profile foundation that uplifts the invisible workers, janitors, aides, support staff, it shifts public attention, changes the story, makes people ask questions. Naledi added, and if the foundation renovates the school, it exposes where the money wasn't going all these years. Accountability. Elijah exhaled. And someone doesn't want that. They sat in silence for a moment. Then the lamp flickered. Once, then again, then stayed dark. Elijah stood up, alert. Battery's good. That wasn't power. Naledi froze, listening. Though, air shifted, like a pressure drop. Outside, wind picked up, scraping the side of the depot with sand and dry leaves. Then, crunch. Footsteps outside. Soft, deliberate. Not the wind. Naledi reached for her phone, but Elijah motioned for her to stay low. He moved toward the corner window, eyes barely peeking past a slat of broken board. A black SUV sat just beyond the fence. No headlights, no engine noise. But a figure moved near the fence line. Another followed. Elijah counted them. 2, no, 3. All wearing dark jackets, all moving like they'd done this before. He turned to Naledi. We've been found. Her eyes widened. What do we do? He took a deep breath. His body ached in protest, but his mind was clear. We distract them. Long enough for you to upload everything you've got. All the files, all the notes. Get them out. But no argument, he said. You're faster, smarter with tech. I'm just a guy with a flashlight and a mop handle. She didn't laugh. Not this time. He moved to the side exit, crouching low. There's a storm drain out back, leads to a ravine. Take it. Don't stop until you reach town. Find a secure line. Send it all. Naledi stared at him, panic warring with something. Stronger. Resolve. Elijah, she whispered. Don't let them take you. He offered her a faint smile. They've been trying to take me my whole life. She slipped out through the side, vanishing into the dark. Elijah turned back to the door. Footsteps echoed again. This time, closer. Right outside. He picked up a rusted wrench. Not much, but it'd have to do. The lock rattled. Slow, deliberate. Then came a voice. Low, calm. Elijah Reese, we know you're inside. You have something that doesn't belong to you. He gripped the wrench tighter. His breath slowed. Then came the final words, laced with certainty. Elon Musk is no longer part of this story. And Elijah realized, whatever happened next, he was already past the point of no return. The door creaked open slowly, hinges groaning like a warning. Dust lifted from the floor in ribbons as stale air met the night. Elijah stayed perfectly still in the dim light of the depot, the wrench clenched in his hand, heart thudding so loudly in his chest it felt like it echoed off the concrete walls. Bootsteps crossed the threshold, measured, quiet, deliberate. 2 figures entered first, dressed in dark tactical gear, scanning the space with clinical precision. No insignias, no names. They moved like phantoms trained for silence. The 3rd figure entered behind them, taller, lean, with a faint outline of a headset and a tablet clutched to his chest. Elijah Reese, the 3rd man said again, as if the name itself might command obedience. Elijah stepped from the shadows, slowly, carefully. He held the wrench low, not in a threatening stance, yet, but not hidden either. The man in the middle tilted his head slightly, reading Elijah the way a hawk studies its prey. You've caused quite a ripple, the man said. Elijah said nothing. The man stepped closer. The foundation, the media leak, Musk's unapproved, asset transfer, all very inconvenient. Funny, Elijah said. That's not the word I'd use for hope. The man chuckled, low and without humor. You were supposed to retire in obscurity, Mr. Reese. Fade out quietly like the rest. But then he came back. He stepped forward again. Elijah didn't retreat. Let's not pretend this is about philanthropy, the man continued. Musk's visit triggered financial flags, unusual capital movements. Our contracts, certain arrangements, do not tolerate unpredictability. And what contracts would those be? Elijah asked, his voice sharp despite. the tightness in his chest. "Ones that go through kids' schools? Ones that pay for silence?" The man smiled. "Everything has a structure, even silence." He gestured to the agents behind him. "We'll be taking the original Foundation documents, and your cooperation." "I burned them," Elijah lied. The man paused. Elijah saw it, the faint flicker of doubt in his eyes. The man recovered quickly. "Then we'll find the backups." One of the agents moved toward Elijah. He tensed. His back screamed in protest, but he lifted the wrench. Not to strike, just to remind them he hadn't rolled over yet. "You know what the worst part is?" Elijah asked. "You think this is about me, or Elon, or even the money. But this is about 1,000 people nobody ever thanked. The ones who kept the lights on, the floors clean, the kids safe. You want them forgotten." "They were forgotten," the man said, voice flat, "until you reminded people. That was your mistake." Just then, a sharp crack outside. The agents froze. One moved to the window, another crack, then a pop. Then something hissed. Smoke began to drift through the front door. The agent at the window shouted, "External breach, north side." The leader's calm cracked. "How the hell—" Before he could finish, a flashbang exploded just outside the open door. Boom! Elijah's ears rang. The walls trembled. White lights swallowed the dark. When the world swam back into focus, the two agents were down, disoriented. The leader was stumbling backward, clutching his eyes, and from the smoke, a figure stepped in. "Elijah!" a voice shouted. Elijah blinked. It was Elon, alive, bruised, blood trailing from a cut above his eyebrow, but standing. He moved fast, too fast for someone who'd been dragged into a black car only hours ago. A second figure emerged behind him. Female, short hair, tight black jacket, moving like a shadow. She swept in and disarmed the closest agent. With brutal efficiency. "Let's move," Elon barked. Elijah hesitated only a moment. He dropped the wrench and grabbed the bag with the Foundation documents, just as Elon reached him. Their eyes met for the first time since the call had gone dead. "You're alive," Elijah breathed. "I had help," Elon said. "We don't have time." As they turned to run, the leader regained his footing. He pulled a small, flat object from his pocket, no bigger than a thumb drive. "I warned you, Musk," he spat. "You're not untouchable." Elon turned, recognizing the device. "EMP charge," he said. "Drop." Elijah dove behind a support beam as the device hit the floor. Whoom! A dull thud, followed by a wave of energy that knocked out the emergency lights. Sparks flew from a broken outlet. Every phone, every device in the room went dark, but it was too late. Elon had already handed off the physical documents to the woman, who vanished into the shadows with them. The leader lunged for Elon, but Elijah stepped forward and grabbed him mid-stride. Pain tore through his back like a lightning rod, but he held fast, using every ounce of muscle memory from decades of physical labor. "You're done," Elijah growled through gritted teeth. The leader drove an elbow into Elijah's ribs. He stumbled back, but didn't fall. Elon moved next, sweeping the man's legs out from under him in a single motion that was all efficiency. No flair. The man hit the ground hard, groaning. Elon stood over him, breathing hard. "You forgot something," Elon said. "People don't build empires. People like him do." He nodded toward Elijah. Then they ran. Minutes later, they were inside a nondescript van parked off a service road. The woman, her name was Kira, drove with intense focus. Elon sat beside her, wiping blood from his brow with a cloth. Elijah sat in the back, finally catching his breath. "I thought you were gone," he said. "They tried," Elon said, voice hoarse. "Drugged me. Held me in a private compound. I only got out because Kira used to work for them." She glanced at him in the rear view. "Used to being the key phrase." "Who are they?" Elijah asked. What are they? A shell, Elon said. Funded by a coalition of defense contractors, some linked to global surveillance. They've embedded themselves into education, infrastructure, communications. Quiet, surgical. Their goal is control, by obscurity, which means any narrative they don't own becomes a threat. And the foundation? Elijah asked. Elon nodded. Was a match in their haystack. They were scared it would spark something bigger. Will it? Elijah asked quietly. Elon turned to him. Yes. Kira tapped the GPS. We'll reach the drop point in 5. After that, it goes wide. Elijah exhaled. For the first time in days, a flicker of light broke through the weight in his chest. But then his phone, miraculously still functioning, vibrated. The message flashed on screen. No contact name, just a number. Stop now. You've been warned once. Attached was a photo of Naledi, tied, gagged, fear in her eyes. Taken just minutes ago. Elijah's hands shook. He turned the phone toward Elon. Elon's eyes darkened. They just made their last mistake. Elon's words hung in the van like thunder after a lightning strike. Kira glanced in the rearview mirror, her knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. Elijah didn't speak. He couldn't. The photo of Naledi, her eyes wide and terrified, was seared into his mind with a pain deeper than panic. This wasn't just another student. She had stood beside him, believed in him, fought for the truth. And now, she'd been taken. Elijah clutched the phone, his hand trembling. Where would they take her? Elon leaned forward, eyes burning with a kind of fury that only a man who'd built rockets and faced down empires could hold. There's a location, one they use to process threats. Private farmland, west of town, off the grid, no official record. But I've been there. You sure? Kira asked. I escaped from it 2 nights ago, he said. She's there. Kira nodded and swerved the van onto an old service road, kicking up a plume of red dust. Elijah's spine throbbed with every bump in the road, but he bit it back. He didn't have time to feel pain. Not now. What's the plan? Elijah asked. No plan, Elon said. We don't have time for one. Then we improvise, Kira muttered. The compound loomed in the distance like a wound in the earth. Low concrete buildings flanked by fencing topped with coiled razor wire. Floodlights swept in slow, calculated arcs. A single guard post stood at the entrance, with armed personnel patrolling in pairs. Elon, Kira, and Elijah huddled in a patch of scrub brush, watching through binoculars. Elon passed them to Elijah, who adjusted the focus, peering into the facility's interior. There, a glimpse, just a flicker, of Naledi, being led across a courtyard by 2 guards. Her arms were bound in front, but she was walking, not dragged. Alert. Alive. Elijah's throat tightened. She's there! Kira was already unpacking a small satchel. Inside were smoke grenades, a signal jammer, and a compact radio transmitter. We go in loud, she said. Cause chaos. Isolate her. Extract her. Too dangerous, Elijah said. If they panic, she's the first casualty. He looked at Elon. They're not afraid of you. No, Elon said. But they should be. There was a long pause. Then Elijah reached into the bag and pulled out a maintenance vest Kira had stashed, dark blue with reflective tape. Anonymous. Familiar. I'm going in first, he said. As a contractor, they won't blink twice. You're not a soldier, Elon said. No, Elijah replied. I'm a janitor, and people like me, we walk in and out of places every day that no one bothers to look at twice. They stared at each other. Elon's jaw clenched, and then he nodded. Elijah's heartbeat echoed in his ears as he walked up the side access path, hands stained with old oil, shoulders hunched. The sun was just starting to dip, casting long shadows across the dry grass. A clipboard in one hand, a coil of wire in the other. The first guard barely looked at him. "You're late," Elijah shrugged. "Fuse box flagged a surge on your west perimeter. Told me to check it before nightfall." "Clear it fast," the guard muttered. Turning away, he was in. The compound was a maze of squat buildings and tight corridors, all bathed in the low hum of fluorescent light. Every step sent a jolt through his spine, but he kept moving, silent, invisible. Years of cleaning unnoticed had trained him well. Then, voices. He paused at a junction, pressed against the wall. The Musk situation is spiraling. The girl was just leverage. She has the files. She's a kid. No one's going to believe her. Doesn't matter. We hold her until this foundation dies. Then we erase the rest. Elijah clenched his fists. Not this time. He waited, until the voices moved on. Then he slipped into the next room, a storage space with a control panel, and beside it, a set of feeds from the security cameras. And there she was. Naledi, handcuffed to a chair in a windowless room. Eyes narrowed. Still fighting. He pulled the walkie from his belt and clicked it twice. Silent signal. Kira would know what it meant. Elijah left the room and made his way to her. The extraction was chaos. Kira's smoke grenades went off in a wave of blinding white, followed by a short EMP burst that knocked out the compound's comms. Elon, masked, and moving like a force of nature, burst through the smoke and leveled two guards with non-lethal rounds from a custom tranquilizer rifle. Elijah reached the interrogation room just as a guard raised a hand to Naledi's face. "Hey!" The man collapsed, and Elijah fumbled with the cuffs. Naledi blinked up at him, dazed. "Elijah?" she croaked. He smiled, chest heaving. "Time to go, kid." He pulled her up and they ran. They didn't stop running until the sun had vanished, and the compound was just a burning smear of memory behind them. Naledi rode in the back of the van, sipping water, her hands still trembling. Elijah sat beside her, clutching his ribs, exhausted beyond anything he'd ever known. "You came for me," she said. Elijah looked at her, his voice hoarse. "Of course I did." Elon sat across from them, head leaned back, eyes closed. He spoke without looking up. "The files?" Naledi nodded. "Uploaded, distributed, encrypted cloud, news outlets, whistleblower boards. They can't stop it now." Kira glanced over from the front. "The world's going to see everything." 1 week later, the foundation launch took place on the front steps of Pretoria Boys High School. Hundreds gathered, students, teachers, press. And on stage, in a sharp suit, Elon Musk stood beside Elijah Reese. "I want to tell you about a man," Elon said into the microphone. "A man who picked me up when I was broken, who saw me when I felt invisible, who reminded me again and again that dignity isn't given, it's preserved. Quietly, constantly." He turned. Elijah Reese was a janitor. Now he is the namesake of a global foundation built to honor the forgotten architects of our future. Support staff, mentors, custodians of care. Applause thundered through the crowd. Elijah stepped forward, hands shaking, heart full. Naledi stood nearby, smiling, her story now told across the world. Elijah cleared his throat. "I never asked for this. I just did my job. But maybe that's the point. Maybe doing the job, when no one's watching, when no one thanks you, is the very thing that changes lives." Silence fell. And then, cheering. Elijah looked out at the sea of faces. At the banners for the Elijah Foundation, the construction plans for school renovations, the scholarship announcements, the headlines spreading worldwide. He glanced at Elon. "You sure they won't come after us again?" he asked under his breath. Elon smirked. "Let them try." Above them, a banner unfolded from the school's facade. Elijah Reese, Steward of Tomorrow. And for the first time in a very long time, Elijah stood tall, not behind a mop or beside a trash can, but at the very center of the stage, seen, known, and unshakably proud. The war was over. The story was told. And the man they tried to erase had become unforgettable.